I've made friends with the alarm state in my body. I've made friends with the sensation in my body that I get when I'm quote unquote anxious. And as I've made friends with that, I no longer have to escape up into my head. So it's really about getting to the root cause of anxiety, which is this old alarm stuck in your body, typically from childhood, not always, but usually.
Most people think anxiety is all in the mind, but what if that's the biggest myth keeping you stuck? Anxiety actually lives in the body and is called alarm. And until you address the trapped alarm in the system, you will never heal. My guest today, Dr. Russell Kennedy, is a physician, neuroscientist, and best-selling author of Anxiety RX, who battled crippling anxiety himself for decades. In this episode, we uncover the hidden root of anxiety, why traditional talk therapy and medicine often fall short, and how healing is really a spiritual conversation. It may sound woo-woo, but even the neuroscientist agrees that healing is found through connection to oneself, to each other, and to the divine, or as he puts it, loving consciousness itself. Dr. Kennedy's work has truly unlocked so much for me, and fast. Rooted in science, backed by spirit, we are very aligned. If you're ready for real healing, not just coping by treating symptoms, this episode may change everything for you. All right, Dr. Russell, we're just going to dive right in with some hot questions.
Well, I like it.
So LSD and stand-up comedy, are you an anxious masochist?
Jeez. You don't pull any punches right off the top, do you? Well, LSD was something I had to do because I was at the end of my rope. I was feeling suicidal. I just left my medical practice because I felt that medicine wasn't really handling the root cause of a lot of things, and my patients were really struggling. And I felt that there was something deeper. So LSD was something I did because I was so anxious that a very good friend of mine who's a plant medicine specialist said, look, we've got to take you on some sort of journey because you're nosediving here. And the stand-up comedy part was just an escape from medicine in a way, because medicine's so, we say it's scientific, but really it's just recipe. You're basically just a cook. You recognize what the recipe is. They've got a gallbladder issue. We send them off for ultrasound. They get a gallbladder removal. So, I think the thing about LSD was it showed me that my anxiety was in my body and not in my mind. And that really was the crux of how I healed, was learning to stop treating it as a mind problem, because it's not a mind problem. Mind has a component to it, but the major problem in anxiety is this old state of alarm that's stuck in your body, usually from unresolved stuff that happened to you when you were younger.
And what a frickin' unlock that is to know, to identify. So thank you, LSD. Also, yeah. But, that's the amazing thing about life. Sometimes the mystical, unlikely road unlocks such a massive key component in actually healing anxiety. And would you say you are healed?
I would say that I was healed. Yeah, it doesn't mean that I'm anxiety free, because anxiety is just part of everyone's life, right? And I think anxiety is part of everyone's life. What I do now is I still feel the alarm. I prefer calling it alarm rather than anxiety, because I think that's what it is. It's an alarm state in my body. And now I just don't give it so much credibility anymore. I've made friends with the alarm state in my body. I've made friends with the sensation in my body that I get when I'm quote unquote anxious. And as I've made friends with that, I no longer have to escape up into my head, because I think a lot of what happened to us when we were younger was we're in a situation that was too much for us to bear. So it rooted in our body. It escaped the conscious mind into the unconscious mind. And as the body keeps the score, the body takes part of that alarm and stuffs it down into long-term storage. And then we don't want to feel that alarm anymore. So what we do is we escape into our heads with worries, which temporarily makes us feel a little bit better because we're not actually dealing with the underlying problem. But it's like having a sliver in your finger, and the thoughts are just putting a better bandage on it. Until you actually get to that sliver and pull it out, it's just going to get worse. It's going to fester. It's going to infect. So it's really about getting to the root cause of anxiety, which is this old alarm stuck in your body, typically from childhood, not always, but usually. And stop trying to fix it with your mind. You're not going to fix your mind with your mind. It doesn't work.
Guys, I've read Anxiety RX. Is that what you call it? Is that how you say it?
That's what I call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The book, and I read a lot of books in preparation for my guests, and I'm telling you, everybody needs this book. I don't consider myself an anxious person. I definitely had childhood stuff and I have attachment stuff, and I'm much more aware of my anxious attachment style in certain circumstances. And now I'm aware of this background alarm that's in my body that gets triggered. So, but I know so many people that deal with chronic anxiety, and so I could not recommend this book enough. It just unlocks the way that we can deal and actually heal this alarm in our body. We'll keep going with the hot starts. Otherwise my people will get mad at me.
Sure.
Sins of the medical industry. Sins, as we call it, are missing the mark. So what are the sins of the medical industry and psychiatry when it comes to anxiety?
Well, I think we as medical doctors, and I know when I went through medical school, it's a highly pharmaceutically driven industry, for sure. So patients want symptom relief. So if a patient comes in with, heart disease or whatever, and you tell them to exercise, they probably won't exercise. But if you say, here, I'll give you this pill, or you can really exert yourself and exercise, 90% of people will go for the pill. So I think what happens in medicine is we get pulled down, both doctors and patients get pulled down this highly pharmaceutical based symptom relief route, and we don't really get at the root cause of things. And a lot of the root causes of physical illnesses are actually emotional disturbances, typically when we were younger, that just aren't resolved, because the body is a effigy of the unconscious mind. So if you're stuffing all this crap down into your unconscious mind because you can't handle it, it's too much for you as a child, eventually that's going to wind up in your body. And that's been shown in many, many studies. So one of the reasons I got out of medicine in the first place was I just felt like I wasn't treating the root cause of things. And psychiatry especially is very pharmaceutically driven. So if you look at, psychiatrists doing psychotherapy in 2004, it was like 44%. In 2021, it dropped down to like 18%. So a lot of psychiatrists are going to this modification of medication model, where you see 3 people in an hour as opposed to seeing 1 person for psychotherapy. So we're really, the medification of mental illness is really taking us down this path of just putting Band-Aids on the splinter. We're not really dealing with the splinter. We're just putting more and more Band-Aids on top of it.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned in the book a few times, like you can't heal what you can't see, or you can't know what you can't see. And very well-intentioned doctors and psychiatrists wanting to offer help to relieve the symptoms of their patients. But again, it's this root cause. Until you had that unlock with alarm in your body is different than the anxious thoughts in our head. And they feed each other in this loop. We can't actually heal the root, which is
you can't
wired
heal
in our
what you
system.
can't see,
Yeah,
or refuse to see in the case of medical profession. Because the thing about medical doctors is when you approach them with something that they don't understand, as in trauma is held in the body. Now, it may be held in the brain's representation of the body, but it doesn't really matter for me, for all intents and purposes. Trauma is held in the body. Now, medical doctors are not trained in any way to understand that. So when you come up to medical doctors with this, they're going to say, oh, that's witchcraft. That doesn't make any sense, because we're not trained understanding that. And on top of that, we don't have any modalities to even examine that and look at it and try and bring it to the surface. So if there's something there that's causing a problem and medical doctors aren't trained even to see it, of course they're not going to do it. Of course they're going to give you a medication. Don't go looking for peanut butter in a tree. You're not going to find it there. Don't go going to your GP for psychotherapy because they don't really know anything about the roots of somatic illness.
I love when you say in your book, God only gives you what you can handle.
Right.
But then you question, you're like, but why are so many people then choosing to exit through suicide?
Yeah. The joke I used to tell on stage in stand-up was, God will only give you what you can handle. Right. And then does he meet them at the pearly gates going, sorry, dude, my bad. I just gave you a little too much there. It's just these platitudes that we get have some truth in them, have some basis in fact. But I think we detour into our mind to try and explain things when really we should be more feeling in our body. We have this left hemisphere driven society where we try and think our way out of everything. And the left hemisphere has given us some amazing things, space travel, air travel, all these amazing things. But when it comes to the spirit, and a lot of emotional dysregulation is spiritual. It's something that happened to you and it's locked in the sense of your body. And I can talk to you about the neuroscience as well. And I hope we get into that as well. But unless we get into the spiritual aspect of this, which is typically all anxiety is separation anxiety. It's mostly a separation of your adult self from your child self. The adult doesn't want to go back to the child because the child holds all their pain. The child sees the adult as ignoring them. And then the other half of that is the mind gets separated from the body. So instead of feeling things, we get in our heads, we go on Facebook, we go on Instagram, we start yelling at the people who have a contrary opinion to ours, and we get lost, we get detoured up into this left hemisphere driven cognitive environment. And life isn't left hemisphere and cognitive, it's feeling. And we need to stay in the feeling of it. And if we don't stay in the feeling of it, we're never going to be able to heal it.
I mean, you just mentioned something that is very topical, being this week. There was a, murder, very public murder because
Absolutely.
of differing opinions. So, I feel like that is driven by fear or alarm in people's system, and by someone else having a differing opinion or speaking or believing or living in a different way. It's such a threat to their system that they are compelled to murder someone. Like, what do you have thoughts about this?
I have millions of thoughts. We couldn't handle it in an hour. But I think as human beings, we hold a tremendous amount of shame. It's just part of being a human being that we hold this shame. Now, the antidote to shame is blame. So when we can't feel something, we can't address the shame in our own system, our own past, whatever's happened to us. We can't address that. So what we do is we deflect. So we blame. So rather than feel our own shame, rather than stay in our body and feel our own shame and process it and metabolize it and move past it, we blame. And then when we blame another person, it discharges that energy. So that shame we no longer feel as acutely. So it becomes a drug in a way to blame others to the and when it gets extreme like this, like to commit murder. This is how poorly we address shame in our society. Is it winds up, because I can guarantee you that every shooter is just riddled with shame.
Yeah. And it brings up like this whole cancel culture that started, I feel like, around COVID times. But we don't allow for people's humanity anymore. We just and so because of this like public shaming that the mob does to avoid their own shame, and canceling people are so afraid to be human and make mistakes that they stuff all this shame down. And now we're all walking around as ticking time bombs of these wounded little children,
Very accurate. I completely agree with you, Kelly. We haven't stumbled on a disagreement between you and I yet. So
well,
we'll keep going.
Hopefully we've both done enough work that we can have a disagreement and not, shoot each other.
Sure.
So we've one more question for the hot starts, even though I completely failed at this hot start thing, because we're diving in deep.
I think you have. Don't have any shame around that. You're good.
Thanks.
You're doing well.
All right, cool. Panic attacks. I feel like you're equipped, and this is such a great nugget for people. I know so many people find themselves in a panic attack. How would you guide someone through, a loved one, a daughter, a friend having a panic attack? You happen to be in the room. What would you say to them to guide them through?
Well, panic attacks are mostly fear of fear. So usually what I would see in my practice is people would say, the other day I was on the bus and I felt this just well up inside me, this feeling of just impending doom. And my heart started to beat really quickly. I started to sweat and I didn't know what it was. Now, what will happen is they will get that again. Their body first will start with these things. And then their mind goes, and this is where everything trips over. What if this is a heart attack? What if you're having a stroke? Now those two things link together. So the body starts getting really, really activated. The mind starts believing I'm having a heart attack, and the worry aggravates the alarm in the body. So the body's reaction gets more and more intense. And when we do that, it shuts off the prefrontal cortex. It shuts off our ability to be rational and understand what's going on. So not only do we feel this fear in our body, our brain, which is a meaning-making, make-sense machine, has to figure it out. So it figures it out by saying, oh, you're having a heart attack. Oh, you're having a stroke, which doesn't help you.
No.
So it winds up, they wind up sort of layering on top of each other in what I call the alarm anxiety cycle. The alarm is in the body, anxiety is in the mind. They link together. Anxiety is two things. It's alarm in the body, anxiety in the mind. It's not just one. So when those two things link together, you go into this runaway train and it shuts off your rational ability. And then you start believing that you are actually having a heart attack or a stroke. Now, tracking back a little bit, I have never seen anybody with panic attacks who wasn't wrestling with a internal problem. And I'll give you an example. I had a patient of mine years ago who was having an affair on her husband. Loved her husband, loved the other guy as well. But she had to split. She had to divorce one of them. She had to let one of them go, essentially. And she was having panic attacks for 6 months until she was able to make this decision. So when I see someone with a panic attack, the first thing I'll say is, what is it that you're avoiding? What is it? What is the conflict, the stone and the hard place? Where is this with you? And just about everybody knows that they are dealing. When you point it out to them in that way, they'll say, yes, I have this job. I've been in it 20 years. It pays me a fair amount, but I hate it. There's always some. And so it's finding that point. And that's usually the pivotal moment where you go, okay, can you do anything about it? Some people can, some people can't. Now, what I get people to do, and this is hard, and I still do this to this day, although I haven't had a panic attack in a couple of years now, is, can I swear on this program?
Totally.
Okay.
Apologize in advance if you don't like swearing, but we're
but it's important for the method.
Okay.
So when I start feeling a panic attack coming on, I tell myself, I'm going to make this the best fucking panic attack I've ever had. Like, come on, bring it on. Bring it on. Let's go. Let's go. Bring it on. Make this the best panic attack I've ever had. So what that does is you're no longer afraid of the fear abjectly. Now you're actually, you're saying, I take the fear on. So instead of this wall of water coming at you and you pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back until it finally, crests over you and crushes you, you incrementally accept the panic, accept the pain, accept the fear response that you're getting. You bring it in. You tell yourself, I'm welcoming this. Now, it may not have anything to do with it, but in your mind, in your prefrontal cortex, in your default mode, you are telling yourself, I am accepting this. And how panic attacks really crush us is the resistance to them. So this is harder, easier said than done.
Yeah.
But it's learning how to teach yourself, A, what thing am I avoiding? Can I deal with that? And B, if I do start getting a panic attack, can I tell myself that I really want to welcome this in? I really want to bring it in, because that prevents the crescendo of the panic attack that crushes you. The other thing that I would do with people with panic attacks often is I would give them a couple tablets of a benzodiazepine. And I know benzos are like, oh, they're the devil's work or whatever. But I give you 2 tablets, 3 tablets. You're not going to get addicted to 3 tablets. And what happens is they start getting a panic attack. They take the Ativan or the Xanax or whatever it is. In 10 minutes, the panic attack is pretty much gone. In 10 or 15 minutes. So after that point, all they need to know is that they've got another one of those tablets in their wallet, their purse, their pocket, and they can handle it. So that the worst thing about panic attacks is you don't know where they're going to end. So when you know they're going to end, or you have something that ends them, that will stop the panic attack. So it's a form of anxiety. It's an extreme form of anxiety, but usually, almost always, there is something that you're not following through with. There's a rock and a hard place situation in your life, and you're not dealing with it.
And so, post benzo, now you're off the cliff. You're not going to die. You calm down in your body, and then you can investigate what that might be, knowing that if this happens in the future and you haven't fully resolved this rock and a hard place situation, you've got a solution to save your life, the perceived threat.
Yeah, you can attack it from different ways. You can attack it from the root cause, which is what's the rock and the hard place in your life. You can attack it from when it starts coming up. You can start embracing it rather than pushing it away. And then just sort of seeing that you're losing your mind in a panic attack. So you can sit there in this flushed state and just go, I have this thing that maybe we'll talk about later called sensation without explanation. So basically, it's staying in the sensation, even if it's uncomfortable. Actually, especially if it's uncomfortable, staying with it, staying right there with it. But don't let your mind get into it. Just allow yourself to feel, feel, whatever it is, sweating, heart palpitations, whatever it is, feel that. Don't allow your mind to start making sense of it. Because as soon as you do that and your mind comes up with a reason why you're freaking out, which is probably going to be wrong, that's just going to start the cascade. And this is true for healing anxiety in general, is being able to stay with a sensation, learning how to understand this is a sensation in my body. It doesn't mean anything other than there's part of me, specifically the younger part of me, that needs a bit of attention right now, that I haven't been quite whole with myself. I haven't been quite giving myself an approach to this anxiety that involves the younger version of me, the adult version of me, my mind, and my body. And we can talk about that too.
Totally. All of this is so good. I mean, literally, again, I could not recommend your book enough.
Thanks, Cal.
Because it really breaks it down. And I know you say some people have mentioned that it's repetitive, but that's what we need to reprogram the mind and understand that worry gives us an illusion of safety, and it's actually not, or illusion of certainty. So I'd love for you to get into this child part of us that's wounded, that's stuck in us, that we haven't given attention to, that's speaking to us in sensations, crying out for us to be with it and just be with it and observe it as this conscious observer in the present moment, and how worry is futile.
Right.
And how that one of the chapters is family liar.
Yes.
This whole idea of safety and familiar is not safe.
Right. Yeah. Freud came out with this saying called the repetition compulsion. So what was familiar to you in your childhood, you will unconsciously reproduce in your adulthood. So I would see this in my family practice with people that come from alcoholic parents, and then they find an alcoholic partner. Not always, but often enough. So what was familiar to you in childhood, human beings have this thing that what's ever familiar to us, we equate with security, even if it's nothing like security. It's almost like we imprint this when we're very young, and then we will seek it out as we get older. So when we have, for me, growing up with a dad who had schizophrenia and bipolar, he was loving, caring, and playful and wonderful a lot of the time, but then there was times where he would go into deep, dark depression or be up for 3 or 4 days or go psychotic. And as a child and a young boy and a young adolescent, that was very destabilizing for me. So it would create a tremendous amount of alarm in my system. So for me, that alarm is still there. So when I feel out of control, when I feel like I'm in chaos, I look to this sensation in my body. And this is what I got shown on LSD. My anxiety was not in my mind. It was in this, it's in my solar plexus, sort of where your ribs meet at the front. It's kind of middle between superficial and deep. It's hot, it's sharp, it's purple, it's crystalline. It pushes back into my spine and it pushes up into my heart. That's my alarm. That's also the younger version of me. Because I think when we go into real states of alarm, real states of anxiety, I think we're in an age regression. I think we go back. I think our body feels the same way now than it did when our dad was yelling at us, or our mother was drunk, or our teacher was screaming at us, or we were being bullied. We go back to the same physicality as that happened. Now, when we're adults, we feel that same physicality. We feel that alarm in our body. And rather than put our hand over it and express a connection to it, because it is the younger version of you, we go up in our heads. We go into the warnings, what ifs, worst case scenarios, what I call the 3 W's of worry. Because what that does is it makes the uncertain appear more certain. When you worry about something, you make the uncertain appear more certain. In the nucleus accumbens in your brain, you get a little shot of dopamine. So it kind of says, worry kind of tells you, hey, you're on the right track. You've made this kind of make sense. But you made it make sense in such a painful way that it comes back into your body, creates so much more alarm. And then you get into this loop where you have to start worrying to sort of assuage that pain of alarm in your body when you're just making it worse the whole time. You're just biting your own tail. So it's really about understanding that this alarm in your system can be a conduit to the younger version of you. This feeling can take you right back to a place where you were 10 years old and your brother was abusing you, or 12 years old and you were getting, you had to do a presentation at school and everyone laughed at you. We can go back to these things and we can go back to them and feel them and really track back. Okay, can I go into this situation? And I will often do this with therapy when I deal with my clients, is I'll say, okay, let's go into this situation that you were in. And how do you feel? It's like, well, I feel this constriction in my throat. A lot of my female patients who had domineering mothers or narcissistic mothers will feel their alarm in their throat. It feels like a squeezing sensation, hot, red, murky, whatever it is. It's like, okay, well, let's put your hand over that. Let's breathe into it. Let's stay with it. And then let's just imagine you staying with the younger version of Kelly. And can you see her eyes? Can you see how she felt? Can you feel how she felt? Can you see what she was wearing? So we go back into this place where now we actually have a screwdriver at the origin of where this alarm is starting, where we can change it, as opposed to every time we get a whiff of this alarm sensation in our body, which most people aren't even aware of, by the way, we immediately go up in our heads and start worrying. And then we assume that the anxiety is the worries because we can see them clearly. We can see what we're worried about very clearly because we talk to ourselves in words. But what we're less clear on is this feeling that's in our body. It's the feeling in the body that starts the worries of the mind. Now, the worries of the mind can actually start the alarm in the body as well. But typically, it's the alarm in the body that creates the worries of the mind. And the reason why the medical profession doesn't really heal anxiety very well and only treats the symptoms is it only tries to fix the worries. It tries the power of positive psychology, positive thinking. We've all heard this hundreds of thousands of times. But the thing is, unless you regulate your body, all the insights that you learn from your childhood or whatever, there's nothing for it to stick to, because thoughts are like vata. Thoughts in Ayurvedic medicine of the ancient India 10,000 years ago. Thoughts are vata, they're air. They don't stick to anything. Now, if you ground your body first, and then you have this insight that every time I go into a grocery store and I see a mother yelling at her child, I freak out. Then you're forewarned is forearmed. Then you know that that's one of your triggers. And that's something that you can work on and even practice in your mind, finding that alarm in your body and finding that younger version of you and being able to calm that younger version of you. Now, I'll wind it up here quickly. And it's like, sometimes I want to have a seizure as a medical doctor when I talk about inner child, this sort of a feeling in the body, all this kind of stuff, because I can talk about the basal ganglia and the bed nucleus of the striatum terminalis and all these sort of neurological structures that underpin anxiety. But it really comes down to the fact that anxiety is more of a spiritual issue than a medical one. And we're not going to be able to heal a spiritual issue with a medical intervention. Now, medical interventions can help. They can put you in the arena to be able to heal. But what I find with a lot of people that I put on antidepressants is once they're feeling better on antidepressants, they feel no desire whatsoever to go back and actually unearth the original wound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's so much to get.
Yeah, I can talk forever. I told you got to slow me down here.
No, I love it. I mean, you're talking about kind of this somatic experiencing that none of us are ever taught. We're told as young girls to be nice and be polite, and as young boys, like, don't cry, be tough. And so we're very early on, just general, obviously this is a generalization, but we are, and then we're modeled what our parents got, which not necessarily healthy or conscious, because from the depression and all these other things.
True.
And so, here we are, everybody listening, kudos to you. We're trying to break the cycles. But it really is feeling to heal. We have to remember how to feel again. And what your work is teaching us how to drop in. And I love this idea of like just becoming aware of the sensation without explanation. And that's what I was just recently, after all this healing work I've done for, decades, just started getting into somatic experiencing. I'm just learning how to feel and be. So is that like, you say you've done a lot of healing of this anxiety, like, for these wounds, for these kind of blocked, emotions, suppressed emotions that we haven't dealt with, or these parts of us that have been neglected, is it just a matter of continuing to practice that conscious awareness and that somatic experiencing and that sensation without explanation does that do it on its own? Like, does your nervous system rewire with that attention? And
Yeah.
what else do we need?
It sets the stage. I think we heal in community. I really think that men's groups are going to be so important going forward as far as being able to metabolize a lot of this stuff for men. Women are much more open in general about talking. And I think they're much more amenable to one-on-one therapy than men are. That's a generalization, of course. But there are old traumas. Like I have this acronym called ALARM, which is abuse, loss, abandonment, rejection, and maturing too early and shame. So those things all create alarm in our body. And when we can see that those alarms are what's creating, they never got processed, that's what's creating the anxious, worried thoughts of our mind, we can start bringing them up. Now, sometimes they're just too intense. If you have physical, emotional, sexual abuse, it's very difficult for you to sort of process that on your own. Now, understanding that you can do it through a somatic focus, I think, is helpful. And somatic focus, I think, are helpful. They're not the be-all and end-all. I'm qualified as an SEP. I think that it has some great components to it. It also has some pitfalls, just dealing completely with somatics. But I think that's the way that we have to start opening up, because the cognitive part of us can only heal so much. And like I said, thoughts are air. So it's really getting into the somatic part of it. And the somatic part for me, when you can isolate this alarm in your system, that is a conduit to the younger wounded part of you that goes into an age regression. So you're actually dealing with the issue at its source. But I do also recommend having friends, having people that you can talk to about this. It's not something that you just sort of sit there and go, oh, I'm just going to feel it to heal it and stay with it, and it's going to just metabolize and move through me. I think we need some help. We need another person, a nervous system to ping off of, because when we go into these situations, our nervous system becomes quite dysregulated. So it's asking someone with a dysregulated nervous system, usually from old trauma, to regulate themselves. Now, you can understand this and you can do this in sort of a fairly superficial way. But as far as deeper resonant healing, I think we need other people. We need a group. We need something to reflect this back to us, because it's so intense that we don't want to touch it. And it's really creating that safety, because so much of therapy is dealing with the issue, and it's really not the issue. The issue is the symptom. The underlying cause is the state of alarm that's in your system from your youth. So if you can create a sense of safety in your body, even if you have the alarm and the safety. Sometimes what I'll do with people is say, when they're going through, I remember when my dog died. And I'll say, okay, let's go into that feeling. It's like, where do you feel it? I feel it in my heart. It feels heavy. It feels like a pressure. It feels hot. It feels red, murky, hollow. It's like, okay, what was the best time in your life? Oh, it's, when I went camping when I was 21. I just finished university and school, and I went camping with all my friends, and we just had such a great time. Okay, let's tap into that feeling. Where do you feel that? Oh, that's kind of in my shoulders and across my back. It's very light. It's like, okay, well, let's do a recipe here. Let's mix that feeling of, the pain, and then let's mix it in with that pleasure and go back and forth. And that shows your unconscious mind, hey, this isn't all of me. When it was happening, when you were going through your trauma, it did feel like all of you, because you were a child. You didn't have a whole lot of agency in that situation. You were powerless. And part of the age regression part of it is we feel powerless again today. But what I try and teach people is, you may feel the exact same way you did as an 8-year-old, but you're not an 8-year-old. You're an adult now. So you have a lot more agency in your own healing. So it's a matter of finding this alarm in your system, learning how to process it. And there's different ways you can process it, but learning how to process it and seeing that that's the cause of your problem, and stop endlessly looking for, I didn't get enough love from my high school boyfriend, and that's why I'm like this. That's not it. That's not it. What you say is not it. And that's part of the problem, is because human beings are much better at describing things than they are emotions. So they will preferentially go to things than emotions, which makes it really hard, because we really have to describe the emotion and the feeling of it in order to start changing it, even just a little bit. Because if we escape into our heads with worry, what I call the three W's of worry: warnings, what ifs, worst case scenarios. If we escape into our minds every time we feel this alarm in our body, and it's background alarm, we may not even know it's there. If we escape into our minds, we never actually deal with it, which is the splinter. So we have to actually go for the splinter rather than just trying to put fancier Band-Aids, fancier talk therapy on top of it. I'm not against talk therapy. I just think that it has its limitations. It's not going to heal you, but it'll help you cope.
Yeah. So interesting. And as adults, it's like we're being driven by this like inner child wounding, alarm system. And yet now we're these capable adults, but everything is subconscious, which is I love you mentioned the community and the practitioners. And like, obviously I try every modality under the sun, peeling back layers. That I was just doing equine therapy a few days ago. And I had a traumatic experience when I was 7 years old with a horse, not traumatic to most people, but like it was traumatic to me as a 7-year-old on this giant horse that went off in the wild at a second grade birthday party.
Yeah.
Terrified. So I started doing equine therapy to get over my fear of horses. And then, the magic and the mystical like information that came from these beautiful, sensitive beings has been no short of, transformational and profound. But so I was sitting in a chair and these were new horses that my practitioner, my facilitator was working with. So there was like the fact that she wasn't super familiar with the horses was a little unnerving to me. But I sat there, I was so proud. All she said was, these horses, I was sitting there and they don't come until your energy is ready for them to come. So that was one piece of meaning that I needed. Then this beautiful horse came in and she said, trust that you have the capacity to set boundaries. If the horse doesn't want to hurt you, it's coming in to help you. It's coming in to read your energy and do some clearing and do what the horse does. But trust that if it's getting, you can you are an adult grown woman that can like handle a boundary. It's not some psychotic horse that's going to come rip off your face. And I was like, oh yeah. She's just that reminder that like I am a capable adult and can hold space and energy. And, of course we're going to get hurt in life. We're going to trip up. We're going to get smacked in the face. But like we are resilient enough to navigate these challenges. And I was so proud of myself. I sat there and held and let this horse like work all around my head and touch me. And whereas, a year ago or even a day ago, I would be in full alarm thinking this horse was going to do something painful to me, And so I'd love for you to speak about this, like as adults being with these scared parts of ourselves and then going, oh, I have a lifetime of experiences that has equipped me to start behaving differently.
Yeah, it's really interesting, with horses. I've sort of studied a little bit of equine therapy, not very much at all, but it's one of the things that they tell you is like, wait for the horse to invite you to touch them. If they come up to you, like don't touch them first. Wait for the invitation. And I think the same is true for the younger version of us. So I get people to put a picture of themselves up on their bathroom mirror when they were 5, 10, 12, whatever it was. And be able just to connect with that. You don't have to go in. You don't have to go anything deep. You just have to sort of watch yourself every day and be able to connect to it. And then you have this image that we would go back with you. I would go back to the horse when you were 7 and we would track that in your body. And then I would get you to say, can you see what you were wearing on that horse? Can you see your eyes as a frightened child? Can you see frightened Kelly's eyes? Can you connect with her? Can you invite her to be with you as an adult? Which gives her some power because she had no power back then. So she has the choice to approach you, to come to you. You're not saying, hey, you're my child, I will look after you. Because the child, because we've ignored the child for so long, sometimes decades, because they hold our pain, and we don't want to go back to them, that child doesn't trust us. So it's building this sort of, I know this sounds very ethereal, but building this trust between little you and adult you. And as you meld those two together, the alarm starts to regress because the reason why the child is alarmed in the first place is they didn't have an adult figure there to support them at the time that the trauma happened. Or worse, their parent was the source of the pain. So when you give that child some agency that they didn't have back then, even if it's just imaginary, it empowers their unconscious mind, and it allows them maybe to go a little further and maybe extend their hand to you, or maybe maintain eye contact with you. And all this is very ethereal, I know. And sometimes, like I say, as a neuroscientist and a medical doctor, I want to have a seizure when I talk about this because it sounds so weird. But it's the only thing that really healed me was really going to the spiritual. We're mind, body, spirit creatures. Mind and body, we have medicine, we have, neuroscience, but spirit is what heals us. It's not coming. Science won't heal you. Science will give you coping strategies. So whenever I see evidence-based mental health help, I always think coping strategy. Like every time I see evidence-based mental health, I think coping strategy, because that's what it is. Science cannot figure out spirit. We cannot reduce love. We cannot put love into a jar that we can split it into atoms and go, this is it, or this is the part of the brain that has love. We've been trying to do that for many, many years in neuroscience, trying to find the source of fear in the brain, the source of love in the brain. It just doesn't happen. We can't do it because it's not one thing. It's like light is a wave and a particle, right? It's not just one thing. So science is not going to heal us. Science can give us strategies. It can give us little things that we can use to open the door to us. But what's really going to heal us, what's really going to resolve the mental dysregulation, is this spiritual connection to ourselves, to other people, but mostly to ourselves.
Yeah, to ourselves, to other people, and to
The greater
higher intelligence.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, nailed it. So
Without
funny.
God, without going into a specific, a la Jesus, it's consciousness. It's the quantum field. It's an energy level that we don't see as human beings because we are so seduced by our brains to believe that everything we see is real, and that's all there is. And there is so much that we don't see. And we can use that to actually heal us. That quantum field, that sense that there is a higher power, not necessarily a God in the truest form of the word, but something that is benevolent and is actually looking after you. Because when you were a child, if your parents did not do this, you don't have a trust. You don't have a blueprint for a higher power. You don't have a blueprint for something above you. And the things that were above you maybe treated you badly. So you don't want to trust in a God, because when you trusted in the gods that were your parents, they let you down. But that spirit is still with us. It's still around us. And just because you had a bad experience with your parents does not mean that spirit in and of itself is bad or toxic or fearful or invisible.
Yeah, or abandoning or, betraying. Yeah. I'm just beaming over here with vitality because you are speaking my language. And so much to say on that, but like even the wave particle thing, it's like that depends on the consciousness of the observer. I mean, but I'll tell you a funny story because I've intended, and this was reflected back in my equine therapy in crazy ways. I live in the awe and the mystical, and I've just become conscious that is my essence. That is where I thrive. And when I open and accept that that's who I am and that's my experience and these are my knowings that I've had, it's just all around me at all times, and it's mind-blowing and it's miraculous, and there's no limit to what I can witness.
I hear you, baby.
I agree. And I know you agree, which is why I'm bringing this up. So I start reading your book on, God, I don't even remember the night, but it was this weekend. It was a couple days ago. And I'm just like in awe of this whole alarm thing. I'm like, that's it. That's the root. This is, he nailed it. Everybody needs to read this book. And, because that's my work. My work right now is my next docuseries is all about waking people up to the fact that they've disconnected from themselves. And we've forgotten how to feel. And we need to drop in and start to feel so that we don't, everything that you're saying. All that to say, I set the alarm in my house that I'm renting. I've been here for 5 months. Never has the alarm gone off, like triggered by someone. Go to sleep with my 6-year-old who sleeps with me. She falls asleep. This is Monday night. I think this was just last night? No, the night before, Sunday night. And so she falls asleep at 8:09 because I look at my clock and I'm like, okay, I'm going to wait till she falls asleep. Then I'm going to read the rest of your book or keep reading in bed with her. But alas, I fall asleep with her. And at 8:53, whole house like blaring, like alarm is triggered. And I'm like, okay, I don't have a gun in my house. I don't have my neighbor who's like very protective is out of town. Like, what do I do? Do I let the alarm keep going and the police come if there's an actual intruder? What do I do? So I just, I lay there. She's not moving. She's sleeping through the whole thing, thank God. I go and I turn off the keypad and then I go downstairs. Obviously, my sense didn't feel like a real threat, but obviously my whole system is lit up in this acute alarm activation. And I'm looking and it says that the front patio door was tripped. So I'm looking out there, nothing there. It's also on a very lit street. So why would anyone enter the front patio door? Also, I was like, this is the first time I've closed the curtains on the front patio door. I never do that. I usually just bolt it. Anyways, the whole thing is very surreal. Nothing happened on the camera. There was no wind to trip the door. The alarm just went off. Yeah. And it was like this mystical reflection of it was something from the universe physically acting out so that I could be aware of my body. And then I ended up calling the police because there was a suspicious car. So the whole time I was just aware of this alarm system going off in my body. Yeah. And it was just like, of course, you can't write this shit, you know?
And I think that's true. And I think we communicate with ourselves in words. We speak to ourselves. An MIT study has shown this quite clearly, that when we talk to ourselves, about 8 seconds later, we do the action that the words told, go get a glass of water. So we talk to ourselves in words. We don't talk to ourselves or other people in feelings nearly enough, because we're not as good at it. If you asked me to sort of speak to you in Spanish, I can do it, but I would much rather speak to you in English because I'm much more adept at it. And I think, my Spanish kind of falls away. And I think that's true with feeling. I think when you don't communicate with feeling very much, you get led down the garden path of thinking that thinking is everything. And I think we live in this left hemisphere driven, very mind-based society that believes that thinking is everything. And the more fearful that we get, the more we start relying on like science, and science knows everything. And there's nothing wrong with that in a way, as long as you're aware that you are moving into the thinking realm and you've left the feeling realm. And the more often you feel, and this is true with your own body, the more you leave the feeling realm, the less good you get at it. So healing from anxiety, the old saying is, it's not about feeling better so much as getting better at feeling. Allowing yourself to feel the minutia, the nuance of anxiety, the jealousy, the envy, the disappointment, all this kind of stuff. The thing with us worriers is we tend to railroad any negative emotion down into anxiety and then start worrying about it. So it's like 1, 2, 3, the situation that creates all this worry had nothing to do with anxiety, but our body felt it. Our mind, being a compulsive meaning-making, make sense machine, has to do something with it, which is basically what you're doing when you're going downstairs. Your mind is like, what is this? What is this? What is this? What is this? And your feeling was, I think I'm okay. Like, I feel like I'm okay. But in society, that example would be, no, you'd call the police, you'd go around triple checking all the doors, you might buy yourself a gun the next day. That's the thinking part of it. The feeling part of it is what we're losing in society. And we're losing the ability to communicate with ourselves first, and then we lose the ability to communicate with everybody else. And anything other than shame, blame, anger. I have this acronym I call JABS, which is judgment, abandonment, blame, and shame, which is kind of what the humans do specifically to ourselves, and we do it to other people as well. When we feel off balance, when we feel alarmed, we look for judgment, we abandon, we try and go into ourselves, we blame the other people, and then we shame ourselves for doing it, which starts the whole cycle over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's the voice in my head. Jabs all day long. Yeah. But we're working on it. Yeah. I feel like I want to ask you about fear and victimhood, and like in this awareness of this conversation about how we need to start exercising this feeling rather than like going to this. I feel like fear has driven us to like cling to the science, but there's also a lack of awareness around how science, a lot of it is captured by the people funding the actual research
True.
to get results. So I think that people are grasping to science that is kind of doctored in a way or presented in a way that may not be, universally fact. And also just the fear and the need. Fear has cut off our rational mind, right? It shuts down our rational mind and our critical thinking. So
It does.
and society and the algorithms and social media will be inciting and kind of fueling this fear that we have. So
Totally.
in theory, a lot of people's rational minds are down. They're in fear. So they feel a little powerless, which then exacerbates the fear. And that's why we do crazy things like shoot people.
Yeah.
So I kind of want you to speak your wisdom on like getting people out of victimhood and abating the fear. Like we need to be the change that we want to see in the world, and just becoming aware of how fear driven and how victim, like if we can become aware that we're in that victim or fear cycle, there's a difference between righteous anger, I think is what I'm saying, and
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
anger. So I'd love your wisdom on that.
Yeah. So I think what happens is when we get into alarm, when we get flared up by something, we secrete adrenaline and cortisol into our bodies. And that creates this further alarm sensation, which creates more adrenaline and cortisol. And we do that. And then our brain looks for reasons why we're upset. And we can always find reasons why we're upset. That concretizes what we're worried about. And then we get into this loop. And in that loop, we shut off the rational part of our brain. So the prefrontal cortex, we shut that off in favor of the emotional brain. So just to put it in sort of easy terms, the emotional brain gets lit up and the rational brain goes offline. Now, the emotional brain has the reasoning power of about a 6-year-old. So we're not really seeing, this is why crime's a passion. This is why people know if I kill someone, I'm going to go to jail or I'm going to get killed myself. Now, they know that cognitively, but that cognitive part of their brain has been shut off. So all they see is the emotion. All they see is what's happening to them right now. So when you realize that when you're in this thing, when your alarm is going off in your house, your emotional system is going to take over and it is going to try to shut off your rational brain. So what we need to do at that point is put our hand on our chest, do some deep breathing or some physiological sighs, 2 quick breaths in through your nose, and then a slow exhale through your mouth, do like 5 rounds of those. That brings back our rational brain so we can actually see things for what they are rather than with the emotional brain of a 6-year-old. Now, victimhood comes into this where often what I will see with my clients, patients, whatever I have to call them now, is anger was shut down in a lot of my patients when they were younger. Anger wasn't allowed in the family. Now, when you take anger away from a child, not rage, but anger, when you take anger away from a child, you leave them as victims because they have no power left. Anger is the only power as a child to go, hey, this is crossing my boundary. I don't like this. But if you take that away from them, you are making them into a victim. And over the course of time, that victimhood will create this alarm reaction very quickly in your body. And when you have this alarm reaction, your brain, again, being a meaning-making, make sense machine, will look at your world and go, what do I have to be afraid of? And like Brene Brown says, don't go looking through the world for reasons why you don't belong because you'll always find them. And this is what your brain does. So not only when your body is alarmed, do you make more worries, but you also shut off the part of your brain that would say, these worries aren't real. So you get double whammied in a way. And that re-emphasizes the fact that you're a victim. I can't get out of this. I can't do this. So someone will have a panic attack on a bus and then we'll never go on a bus again. Or they'll have a panic attack in a grocery store and we'll couple it with grocery stores. They won't go into a grocery store again. You may never have gotten on a horse again. So it's a matter of, and we are rewarded for avoidance in our brain. And one of the reasons why I think anxiety is peaking right now is because we are avoiding the alarm that's in our system and trying to find rational reasons, psychotherapy maybe being one of them, medication maybe being another. I have nothing against medication, by the way. But we're trying to find ways of dulling the symptoms without actually allowing ourselves to feel. So we're getting into a very thinking-based society who is losing their ability to feel, and that creates and that thinking is very victim-based. So that's not going to work out very well for human beings.
Yeah. So exactly. You nailed it. Tell me about your MBRX.
Oh, so that's a program I made 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm revamping it now. And it's basically 2.5 hours. The middle two videos are meditations. I call them hypno meditations. So since I've been like a teenager, I've used self-hypnosis for sports performance and for emotional regulation as well. So the first 3 or 4 videos, they're about 8-10 minutes each. They will go into what we've talked about today in a little more detail about where your anxiety comes from, why you've been anxious, and why you can't get out of it. Then there is a meditation that says, find your alarm. So we go into, you put your headphones on, you listen to it, and we go into one of your traumatic experiences of your life, not the worst trauma of your life, but something that caused you pain when you were younger. And then we try and localize that sensation in your body. So that's a meditation where we find the alarm in your body. The next one is something called a yoga nidra, which is non-sleep deep rest. And what the non-sleep deep rest does is that it starts to attach your adult self to your child self and your child self to your adult self, as well as attaching your mind to your body through this unconscious process. It's about 30 to 35 minutes long. And then the last part of the program is pitfalls that you're going to fall into. Because the thing about anxiety and worry is that our mind has convinced us that the worries are helping us. The worries are making the uncertain appear a little more certain. The worries are taking us away from this alarm that's stuck in our body into our minds. And there is going to be some resistance from that anxious part of us because the anxious part of it believes it's keeping us safe. So, and this is what I notice with my anxious patients when they start to feel better, when they start to leave their anxiety behind, like they'll say to me, Dr. Kennedy, I feel anxious when I'm not anxious.
Yeah.
About not being anxious. I feel worried when I'm not worrying, which is a part of the breaking through process because in your child mind, the worry did provide you with some sense of relief. If you look at the dopaminergic circuits in the brain, nucleus accumbens, we get a little dopamine shot when we worry about something because we're making the uncertain appear a little more certain. So there is this thing we have to overcome because part of us believes that worry was helping us. And in a way, if you look at neurochemically, it was. But it doesn't, in the long run, it's the definition of addiction. You do something short term, makes you feel a little better, but in the long term, it makes you feel way worse.
Yes.
So it's learning about what anxiety truly is, what you need to find within yourself, and then the pitfalls that you're going to go through as you start healing. Because that's the thing. Anybody can heal from anxiety, but it's sticking with it because it's very tempting when you go through a divorce or you go through a difficult time to slide back into those old worries because, again, the child in you believed that was helpful. And those circuits are deep. They're deep in our system. So it's learning through repetition and through connection with spirit as well to be able to see that you are looked after. There are so many things. Like I get, one of the meditations is that, just feel your breath. And know that your breath is there, the oxygen that surrounds you in every moment, in every second of every hour, of every minute of every day. That's there for you. That's there to support you. Or when you're lying down on a surface doing the meditation, know that the laws of physics say that the bed is pushing up on you with an equal and opposite force that you were pushing down on it. And again, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, things aren't real until they're observed. So when you observe that you can actually move through these things, when you can feel this alarm in your system and you can stay with it, sensation without explanation is the big one. When you learn to stay with it, and this is how when we started talking today, how did you heal from anxiety? I still feel alarmed. It's not that ever goes away.
Yeah.
It's just I don't give it credibility anymore. I don't start, clipping on worries and getting into that loop anymore. I'm able to kind of put my hand on my chest, connect with the younger version of me, and I don't have to do this every time now because I've done it so often. You start being your own resource. You start being connected to yourself, and all anxiety is separation anxiety, and it's separation from yourself. It's separation of adult you from child you and mind and body. And the reason why the book is so repetitive is because I can tell you this stuff, but because that urge to worry is so powerful, that I have to repeat it over and over and over. So by the end of the book, you're like, yes, Dr. Kennedy. Yes, Russ, I know that this is alarm. It's like, perfect. I've done my job. I've shown you where your anxiety truly lives. And now you can do something about it instead of just sort of biting your own tail, trying to fix it with fixing your thoughts, because that just doesn't work.
I'm going to go over time because we have so much to talk about. Do you have a few more minutes?
Oh, yeah.
It's just, okay. I'm about to embark, or I'm going through a divorce.
Okay.
And you share beautifully that you went through 2 divorces. Now you're
two of them.
happily married. What is can you take me just real quickly on like the evolution of you through those relationships and what you learned along the way, or like looking back, any kind of like just personal experience that would be helpful here?
Yeah. I think I was just emotionally immature. My parents didn't allow me to have anger. So I rationalized everything. I stayed in my head with everything. And it never really allowed me to process anything. So I couldn't really get connected to another human being at a very deep level because I was in fear most of the time. My body was in this state of alarm. And we have this thing called the social engagement system: eye contact, tone of voice, prosody of voice, which is kind of like the lilting up and down, body language and facial expression. So when we get anxious, when we get alarmed, when we shut off that rational part of our brain and go into the emotional brain, we shut off all those things. We shut off the ability to make eye contact, tone of voice, we become very monotone. So it's very difficult to maintain a relationship when you are not reflecting love and connection to your partner. So I think I kind of starved them for attention for a long time until they finally said, can't do this anymore. Now, it wasn't all me.
No, it never is.
But so what I would say is connect with the pain. There's something that's shutting off your social engagement system. There's something that's shutting off your feeling that love is safe. Because I think one of the reasons why anxiety is such a difficult issue is because we don't trust love. And I grew up in a family where my mother was very dutiful. She was a registered nurse from Glasgow, and she knew exactly how to fix everything down to the last bit. She could fix it. And my dad was the one that was sort of emotionally connected and affectionate, but he was crazy. So I learned
unfixable.
Yeah. And I learned that love is not safe. And there is only love and fear. That's it. There's love and there's fear. That's the only 2 things in the world. So if it's like a closed box, and I think I write about this in this book, but I'm not sure. So the more fear you push into the box, the more love you push out of the box. But the more love you push into the box, the more fear you start pushing out of the box. So it's really learning about being able to tolerate the alarm in yourself and accept some help. And realize that when you go back into the separation, because divorce is a separation, you're probably going to go back and revisit the younger version of you. And be compassionate and kind to her and see if you can see her eyes, see what she's wearing. What did she do? Did she ride her bike? Did she dance? Try and do the things that brought her some joy when you were younger, because really you're trying to connect with that younger version of you before everything went kind of sideways. And even if your trauma was like right through your childhood, you can still find that younger version of you and bring them into your life today, because that child in you doesn't see all the things you've done.
Yeah.
It does. And so it's bringing her into that. And I'll do that too when I go play golf. It's like I call him Rusty. It's like, hey, Rusty, we're going to go play golf today, or I'll hit a great shot. It's like, Rusty, that was a fantastic shot. Or before a really difficult shot, I'd say, okay, Rusty, I need your help here. I need your help here, man. I need you to help me find the play in this, right? Yes. And almost invariably, I wind up hitting a really good shot. So it's just the disconnection that we humans have from the younger version of us, which is really the spiritual part of us too. And the fact that we judge and abandon, we take jabs at the child in us. And when we do that, we start judging the child in this negative way. And when we do that, the child withdraws from us. And we fail to see that the child holds the very best parts of us. So Rusty holds my intelligence, my sensitivity, my sense of humor. He has all of those things. So how can I judge something in me because maybe he got bullied when he was younger? Maybe he had a dad who was, crazy. So I don't have to judge him for that. I can actually say to him, look, I'm really glad that you have all these characteristics because you have really helped me achieve what I've achieved and continue to achieve. Oh. So it's really bringing that child into my present day life, because a lot of us, the child in us doesn't know that we've become this adult, because so often we wind up age regressing into our old pain. And that's a pit that we can't get out of. And I think that's where suicide comes from. I think suicide is a place where we regress back to our old childhood pain because there was no option. There was no way out as a child. But there is a way out now. And I think there's a way out, and people who are facing suicide who talk to me, it's like, there is a way out. You can't see it right now. It's behind a door somewhere, but it's there. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important to understand that we have to connect with that younger version of us. And I know that sounds kind of fruity and, whatever, but it's really how I healed after 35 years of like crippling anxiety, where I just felt like life isn't worth living if I have to live in a 10-hour panic attack every single day. Mm. So it's really connecting with that younger version of you and see her. I have this, I'll end with this because I know I'm ranting. I have this acronym called SHOULD. So this is what you should have got when you were younger. You should have been seen. You should have been heard. You should have been opened to, understood, loved, and defended. Mm. Now that's what you have to give that child in you now. You have to see her, open to her, hold her, understand her, love her, and defend her, and show her that she is all those things. And as you do that, the child will it's not like one and done, the child will start to trust you like a horse. Like they will start to trust you over the course of time. You have to be consistent with them, because universally, what I find with people with anxiety is they didn't have consistency when they were younger. And that's why they're anxious.
Mm-hmm. And that's like the majority of humans listening in on the planet.
Especially now.
Thank you for that. What a beautiful way to end. As you were talking, I was like, I've done so much inner child healing work and parts work and somatic, where you connect with that part of you. And I visualized the young girl who's shooting hoops out back, and just like, I've told her I've got you now. But you said something really beautiful that I will never forget, which is, she is the one that adapted these behavioral coping mechanisms. And she's the one who developed sharp wit to match her dad and call him out on all his shit because he was making our lives so stressful. And like, for her to be seen and go, you did amazing. And now I have all this wisdom. We weren't perfect. We made mistakes, but we learned. And now I'm the strong, capable, present, conscious adult, wise adult. And you are the one who got me here. Like, we're in this together, and like, be so proud of those, the pain that led you to the beautiful work that you're doing today. It's like, it's really I just love your philosophy, and I truly believe all healing is spiritual healing. So thank you.
Yeah, the last thing I would just leave you with, Kelly, is I think that your loudness comes from her. Like if you get into arguments and you get loud, that's her asking for your attention. And that's her method of trying to get your attention, is becoming loud. Now, unfortunately, that gets judged and then gets pushed away. But just understand that when you get loud like that, that's her. She is trying to come out.
No, that's amazing. That's because I wasn't aware of that. But yes, I agree. Okay. Thank you.
Anytime.
Well, you're awesome. And everybody, so where can people find you and your work and that program?
At the Anxiety MD is the website. It's my Instagram. So not the Anxiety Doctor, the Anxiety MD. There's a course called MBRX, your mind body prescription for permanent anxiety healing. There's also hypnomeditations in there, hypnomeditation bundle that I use to connect mind and body and adult self to child self. So it's really about the Anxiety MD. It's my website. It's my Instagram. That's how to find me. I'm not hard to find, but it's really about, and I make these things really affordable, like less than the cost of a therapy session, because I really want people to experience my work, because I do think this is ahead of its time. It's coming from a medical doctor and a neuroscientist. There is a little bit of woo in it, but it's also grounded in science and spirit as well, because we need the science, but we need the spirit more, and we need to understand both. And I think the credibility comes from the science background that I have, but really it's the spirit that heals us. And I like to show people how to maximize their connection with themselves and others.
Amen, brother. We're very aligned. Thank you for coming on the show.
Anytime, Kelly.